vets, this is a special report on the Veterans TV Hour. I'm Rick Seaman, and I'm here today at the headquarters of the National Veterans Foundation, where we will be discussing the new changes in the rulings and regulations on filing a claim for PTSD. These regulations went into effect on July 13th of this year, just recently. And with me, I have four experts on the subject of PTSD, starting with Mr. Dave Culmer. Dave, former career Marine and VA service rep, currently a VSO for American Legion. We have Kerry Wellitz, an attorney from the law firm Bergman and Moore LLC in Bethesda, Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. www.vetlawyers.com. Kerry, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We have Shad Meshad, president of the National Veterans Foundation and lifelong PTSD expert, his experience going all the way back to the Vietnam War. Also from the National Veterans Foundation, we have Apollonio Munoz. We like to call him Apple. Hi, Apple. How are you? And he's one of the foundation's toll-free hotline reps who fields calls here 7 days a week, many of them from veterans with questions and concerns on PTSD and readjustment issues. And thanks for being with me, folks. We've got a lot of knowledge in this room right now, particularly on this subject. Let's start off with identifying the new VA ruling and the date that it went into effect. Kerry, do you have that?
Sure. The new rules for PTSD were proposed actually last August, on August 24th, 2009. They weren't actually in the media until a couple of months ago. As of August 24th, 2009, the regulations were proposed, and the actual code regulation is the 38 CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, and the section is 3.304. Those went into effect July 13th, 2010, when they were published in the Federal Register.
Okay. And what does this new ruling or rulings mean for veterans who expect to file PTSD claims in the future? What has changed?
The catchphrase has been, it's a liberalizing rule. And it really is. And a little bit about the rules. Now a veteran doesn't have the same research or stressor identification that they had to do prior to the new rules. So prior to the new rules, when a veteran had to prove that there was a stressor event in service that caused their PTSD, the veteran had to either have been in combat with some sort of ribbon or decoration or proof that they were in combat. That would have been their automatic stressor. Or they had to provide enough information for the VA and federal agencies to go out and research their stressor, actually go and get unit records, daily reports, daily logs that verified that, yes, this person was in this battalion, this unit, and what they say is true. There was a mortar fire or a sniper fire or an attack on their battalion or command.
Right. Dave, Kerry mentioned certain ribbons or decorations.
Right.
Now, prior to this new ruling, what would certain ribbons or decorations be that just kind of shooed you right in? I mean, like,
well, of course, the heart, a Purple Heart.
Purple Heart.
A Purple Heart is CIB.
CIB.
The Combat Infantry Badge. When a veteran was awarded that, and it was a part of his records,
right,
this really gave a guy a leg up with
right,
regard to having a compensation claim for PTSD approved.
Right. So now with this new ruling, that really isn't a factor then. Is that correct, Kerry?
Not really. I mean, obviously the VA is still going to look at a combat infantry badge and say, okay, there's a stressor, but now it doesn't need to be. Now you don't have to go out and prove it. It's just the fear of military or hostile military or terrorist activity.
Right. Shad, what can you add to that? I mean, as far as what these troops are faced with?
Well, what we know about PTSD is we know that you've got to be in a life-threatening situation or feel like you are. And whether it was Vietnam, World War II, Korea, whatever, many of the support troops, soldiers, are in harm's way. But for many years, you were looked at if you didn't have a CIB, if you weren't a Marine or this or that, and were a grunt, on the ground, boots to the ground, in certain actions or missions or whatever. You know, they really didn't consider you even a soldier. And also, the other problem is it depends on the evaluator. I mean, there's no consistency. It's not like a McDonald's hamburger and French fries. You know, you go there, the VA's not like clone McDonald's. It's what you get. You know, when I came to the VA in 1971, over half the doctors were foreign doctors. Many of them couldn't speak English well. And for us Vietnam vets that came back, many of them were Asian doctors. It was very difficult with someone that didn't speak good English, that's doing your evaluation, and was Asian. End of my point.
I guess. You know, today in Iraq and Afghanistan, you got multiple deployments.
Yes.
And here's guys every day riding in that Hummer or, you know, or that track vehicle going down that road saying, when's the IED going to go off? Mm-hmm. And you know, I've spoken to some psychologists and they say those guys, they're really not there. They're there, but they're not there.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that our Secretary Shinseki has seen it the way he's seen it and changed this, and I think it's all great. Now, I suppose we give all the credit to Eric Shinseki, or should we say if this doesn't work out well, who do we blame for it? I mean, how did that work? It came right out of the VA, right?
The VA proposed to change their own regulations, and honestly, I think it's because of a lot of media coverage from OIF, OEF, because there are a lot of veterans that maybe don't have a combat specialty. They're not necessarily infantry, but they're in the field. There is obviously a fear of military activity or terrorist activity there, and there were a lot of veterans that were coming back from these conflicts. And I think with the media coverage and with the politics of it, I think there was a big push for it through the VA.
You also have to take into account that today's military is no longer frontline military. Everybody from infantry to medical staff, even the cooks, are in harm's way day in and day out.
Right.
Yeah. Totally different war.
Such a great point, because the highest kills in Iraq have been in the green zone.
Yeah.
The green zone for us, which I worked out of mostly during a year in Vietnam, was the safe zones. I mean, you had to just have
and the green zone
lucky to get hit by a crazy zigzagging rocket that just happened.
Well, yeah, the rear in Vietnam, you were in pretty good shape unless a fairly long-range rocket or mortar got in there. I mean, you had some exceptions to that, but we didn't have people driving vehicles into the compound with bombs in them, willing to blow themselves up in the process. You didn't have that in Vietnam.
Yeah, this is
suicide.
These IEDs have really changed. There is no safe zone. I mean, they were doing specials, as you were saying about the media coverage from day one. And the doctors, I remember one in 03, 04, and you had all the surgeons up on the roof, and then they got rocketed up there. I mean, this was in Baghdad. There's just really no safe zone. And then there was the 86 that were blown up in the cafeteria in Bangkok back in the early part of the war. I mean, that's a near-death and a death experience. It all fits in what we know as PTSD.
Right.